The woman crouched in the dirt outside the trading post looked like she had been forgotten by the world, her thin fingers tracing patterns in the dust with such concentration that she didn't hear Nathan Wade approach until his shadow fell across her makeshift canvas. "That's a mighty fine rendering of those mountains," Nathan said, his deep voice soft despite his imposing frame. He stood well over 6 feet tall, with shoulders broad enough to block out the morning sun and arms thick with muscle from years of trapping and hunting in the Wyoming territory. His dark hair hung past his collar, and several days of stubble shadowed his strong jaw. The woman startled, scrambling backward and nearly toppling over. Her hand flew to her chest, and Nathan caught a glimpse of fear in her eyes before she looked down, her face hidden by the brim of a worn bonnet. "I apologize, miss. Didn't mean to frighten you." Nathan took a step back, giving her space. "I was just admiring your drawing." She glanced at him briefly, then back at the dirt where her sketch was already being disturbed by the wind. It had been an impressive rendering of the Laramie Mountains in the distance, complete with shading and depth that suggested real talent. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Nathan studied her more carefully now. Her dress was patched and faded, the kind of garment that had seen too many washings and too few replacements. She was painfully thin, her wrists like bird bones where they emerged from her sleeves. But there was something compelling about her, something that made him want to know more. "You do this often? Draw in the dirt?" He kept his voice gentle, the same tone he used with spooked horses. "It's all I have," she said, and there was such resignation in those 4 words that Nathan felt something twist in his chest. "What's your name, miss?" "Teresa Hayes." She still wouldn't quite look at him, keeping her gaze fixed on the disappearing sketch. "Well, Miss Hayes, I'm Nathan Wade. I've got a proposition for you if you'll hear me out." Now she did look up, suspicion flickering across her delicate features. She had brown eyes, he noticed, the color of honey in sunlight, and a spattering of freckles across her nose that suggested she spent considerable time outdoors. "I don't mean anything improper," Nathan added quickly, seeing her expression. "I just think someone with your talent ought to have proper materials to work with. I'm heading into Wheatland today, and I'd be happy to purchase some paper and charcoal for you. Consider it an investment in art." Teresa's eyes widened. "I couldn't possibly accept such a gift from a stranger." "Then don't think of me as a stranger. Think of me as a patron, like those fancy folks back east who support artists." Nathan pulled off his worn leather hat and held it against his chest. "Truth is, I spend most of my time up in the mountains with nobody but my horse and the occasional mountain lion for company. It'd do me good to know that someone's down here creating something beautiful. Makes the world feel a little less harsh." She studied him for a long moment, and Nathan bore the scrutiny patiently. He knew what he looked like, rough and wild, more bear than man sometimes. But he also knew he had kind eyes, or so his mother had told him before she passed, and he hoped Teresa could see that he meant no harm. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why what? Why would you do this for me? You don't know me." Nathan considered the question. He could have given her a dozen practical answers, but something about Teresa Hayes made him want to be honest. "Because in all my years wandering these territories, I've seen a lot of beauty, mountains and valleys and skies that go on forever. But I've also seen a lot of cruelty, a lot of folks who have forgotten how to be kind to one another. When I saw you drawing in that dirt, trying to create something lovely out of nothing at all, it reminded me that there's still good in this world worth protecting, worth nurturing." Teresa's eyes had grown bright, and she blinked rapidly. "That's the kindest thing anyone said to me in a very long time. Then folks around here need to do better." Nathan settled his hat back on his head. "So what do you say? Will you let me get you those supplies? I'm staying at the boarding house on 3rd Street, Teresa said quietly. Mrs. Palmer's place. You could leave them there if you're serious about this. I'm as serious as a rattlesnake in a boot, miss. Nathan tipped his hat to her. I'll be back before sunset. He turned to go, but her voice stopped him. Mr. Wade, thank you, truly. Nathan looked back at her, and for the first time she gave him a small smile. It transformed her face, making her look younger and lighter somehow, as if the weight she carried had lifted just a fraction. You're most welcome, Miss Hayes. The ride into Wheatland took Nathan through familiar territory, rolling grasslands dotted with sagebrush, and the occasional stand of cottonwood trees along the creek beds. The town itself was bustling with activity, freight wagons rumbling down Main Street and cowboys whooping as they drove cattle through the main thoroughfare. Wheatland had grown considerably since Nathan first passed through 5 years ago, back in 1878. Now, in the summer of 1883, it boasted 2 saloons, a proper mercantile, a bank, and even a small newspaper office. Nathan tied his horse, a sturdy bay mare named Juniper, outside the mercantile and stepped inside. The store smelled of leather and spices, coffee and dried tobacco. Behind the counter stood Martin Foster, a balding man with spectacles perched on his nose. Nathan Wade, as I live and breathe, Martin called out. Thought maybe the Grizzlies had finally gotten you. Not yet, though one tried his best last winter. Nathan approached the counter. I need something a bit unusual today, Martin. You carry any drawing paper? The good kind, not just foolscap. Martin's eyebrows rose. Taking up art in your old age. I'm 32, hardly ancient, and no, it's for a friend. Must be some friend to get you down from those mountains. Martin moved to a shelf at the back of the store. I've got some decent paper here, came in from Denver last month. Fellow was supposed to buy it for his daughter, but he never came back to collect it. Also got charcoal sticks, the kind artists use. Nathan examined the paper carefully. It was thick and smooth, far better than anything he'd expected to find in Wheatland. I'll take all of it, the paper and the charcoal, all of it. That's 20 sheets. All of it, Nathan confirmed. Martin wrapped the supplies carefully in brown paper and twine. This friend of yours must be pretty special. Nathan thought of Teresa crouched in the dirt, her face lit with concentration as she created beauty from dust. I believe she might be. The transaction completed, Nathan made one more stop at the dry goods store. He purchased a sturdy leather portfolio to protect the paper, then added a few other items on impulse. A tin of peppermints, a warm shawl in deep blue that reminded him of Teresa's faded dress, and a pair of soft leather gloves that looked about her size. By the time he reached Mrs. Palmer's boarding house, the sun was starting its descent toward the western horizon. The building was a 2-story structure painted white, with a wide porch and rocking chairs facing the street. Nathan climbed the steps and knocked on the door. A plump woman in her 50s answered, wiping her hands on her apron. Can I help you, Mrs. Palmer? I'm Nathan Wade. I have a delivery for one of your boarders, Miss Teresa Hayes. Mrs. Palmer's expression shifted, something like pity crossing her features. Teresa's room is upstairs, last door on the right. But I should warn you, Mr. Wade, that girl doesn't have 2 coins to rub together if you're selling something. I'm not selling anything. These are gifts. Gifts. Mrs. Palmer looked skeptical. What's a mountain man want with a girl like Teresa? I want to help her, Nathan said firmly. Nothing more, nothing less. Mrs. Palmer studied him for a moment, then stepped aside. All right, then. But you mind your manners in my house, Mr. Wade. Yes, madam. Nathan climbed the narrow staircase, his boots heavy on the wooden steps. He found Teresa's door and knocked gently. There was a long pause before it opened a crack. Mr. Wade. Teresa peered out at him, surprise evident in her voice. "I told you I'd be back before sunset." Nathan held out the wrapped packages. "These are for you." Teresa opened the door wider, revealing a tiny room with barely enough space for a narrow bed, a small table, and a washstand. She took the packages with trembling hands. "I didn't think you'd really do it." "I'm a man of my word, Miss Hayes." Nathan watched as she untied the twine and pulled back the brown paper. Her sharp intake of breath when she saw the supplies made his heart squeeze. "This is too much," she whispered, running her fingers over the smooth paper with something like reverence. "I can't accept all this." "You can and you will." Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small leather pouch. "And this too. Consider it a commission." "A commission?" "I'd like you to draw the mountains for me. The view from up where I stay, where the peaks touch the clouds and the valleys stretch out like a rumpled quilt. I'll describe it to you and you create it. Fair trade." Teresa looked up at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Why are you being so kind to me?" Nathan had asked himself the same question during his ride back from Wheatland. The answer he'd come to surprised him. "Because I've been alone a long time, Miss Hayes. And I think maybe you have too. Sometimes kindness is all we have to offer each other in this hard world." She set the supplies carefully on her small table, then did something that shocked Nathan. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around his waist, pressing her face against his chest. She was so small against his large frame, so fragile, and Nathan felt a fierce protectiveness surge through him. "Thank you," she said, her voice muffled against his shirt. "Thank you so much." Nathan carefully placed his hands on her back, returning the embrace gently. "You're welcome, Teresa." When she pulled away, her face was flushed. "I'm sorry, that was forward of me. No need to apologize." Nathan smiled down at her. "Would you do something for me, though? Anything? Come down to the dining room and have supper with me. You look like you could use a good meal." Teresa hesitated, glancing down at her worn dress. "I'm not exactly dressed for company." "You look just fine to me. Besides, I'm not exactly high society myself." Nathan gestured to his own rough clothing, the buckskin pants and worn cotton shirt that marked him as exactly what he was, a man more comfortable in the wilderness than in town. "All right," Teresa agreed. "Just let me wash my face." They ate in Mrs. Palmer's dining room, a modest spread of roasted chicken, potatoes, and green beans. Nathan watched with satisfaction as Teresa ate with genuine appetite, the color slowly returning to her pale cheeks. Between bites, she told him her story. She'd come west from Ohio 2 years ago with her father, who'd had dreams of striking it rich in the goldfields. But the mines had yielded nothing but debt and disappointment, and her father had died the previous winter from pneumonia. Teresa had been left with nothing, working as a laundress and taking in mending to pay for her tiny room. "Drawing was something I did with my mother when I was young," Teresa explained. "She was an artist, a real one. She painted portraits for wealthy families in Cincinnati. She died when I was 15, and I thought I'd never draw again. But lately, I've had this need to create, to make something beautiful, even if it's just pictures in the dirt." "Your mother would be proud of you," Nathan said, "keeping her gift alive, even when you have so little." "Tell me about you," Teresa said. "How does a man end up living alone in the mountains?" Nathan leaned back in his chair, considering how much to share. "I came west after the war. I was just a boy then, but I'd seen enough death and destruction to last a lifetime. The mountains offered peace, quiet, a place where the only battles were between me and nature. I've been trapping and hunting ever since, selling furs and meat to the trading posts. It's a solitary life, but it suits me." "Don't you get lonely?" "Sometimes," Nathan admitted. "But loneliness in the mountains is different from loneliness among people. In the mountains, You're alone because you choose to be. Among people, you can be surrounded by hundreds and still feel invisible. Teresa nodded, understanding in her eyes. I know exactly what you mean. They talked long into the evening, discovering shared loves of literature though neither had much access to books, a passion for the natural world, and a deep appreciation for quiet moments. When Nathan finally stood to leave, he found himself reluctant to go. Will you come back tomorrow? Teresa asked, walking him to the door. So I can show you the first drawing. I'll be here, Nathan promised. He returned to his camp outside town, a simple arrangement of tent and campfire beneath a stand of trees, but sleep eluded him that night. He kept thinking about Teresa's honey-colored eyes, her gentle voice, the way she'd felt in his arms, small and precious. Nathan had spent years avoiding entanglements, convinced that his solitary life was enough. But something had shifted today, a door opening in his heart that he'd thought permanently sealed. The next morning, Nathan arrived at the boarding house just after breakfast. Mrs. Palmer greeted him with a knowing look. She's been up since dawn, working on something at that little table of hers. Didn't even come down for breakfast. Nathan took the stairs two at a time. When Teresa opened her door, her face was alight with excitement. I couldn't sleep, she said, pulling him into the room. I had to start right away. She showed him the drawing, and Nathan felt his breath catch. Somehow, from his brief description the night before, Teresa had captured the essence of his mountain valley. The peaks rose majestically in the background, and in the foreground, she'd drawn a small cabin with smoke curling from its chimney. I took some liberties, Teresa said anxiously. You didn't mention a cabin, but I imagined you must have some kind of shelter up there. I do, Nathan said softly, and it looks exactly like that. How did you know? Teresa smiled. I pictured what would suit you, something solid and strong built to last. Nathan reached out and gently touched her cheek. You have an incredible gift, Teresa. She leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed for a moment. When she opened them again, Nathan saw something there that mirrored the feeling growing in his own chest. Spend the day with me, he said impulsively. Let me show you the real Wyoming, not just the dusty streets of town. I have mending to do, Teresa began, but Nathan shook his head. The mending can wait. When's the last time you did something just for yourself, just for joy? Teresa thought about it, then laughed. I honestly can't remember. Then it's long overdue. Come on. They rode out together, Teresa sitting in front of Nathan on Juniper, his arms bracketing her as he held the reins. He took her to a meadow filled with wildflowers, purple lupine and bright yellow balsam root creating a carpet of color. Teresa walked through them with her arms outstretched, her face tilted toward the sun. It's beautiful, she breathed. I want to remember this forever. Then draw it, Nathan said. I brought your supplies. They spent hours in that meadow. Nathan watched as Teresa's charcoal flew across the paper, capturing the sweep of the landscape, the play of light and shadow, the delicate detail of individual flowers. He'd never seen anyone so absorbed in their work, so completely present in the moment. When she finally set down her charcoal, Nathan had a fire going and was roasting strips of venison for their lunch. I haven't felt this happy in years, Teresa said, accepting the food gratefully. Maybe ever. You deserve happiness, Nathan told her. You deserve so much more than what life's given you. So do you, Teresa replied. Why do you stay up in those mountains alone, Nathan? Is it really because you prefer solitude, or is it because you're afraid? The question struck deeper than Nathan expected. He was silent for a long moment, watching the smoke from their fire drift skyward. Maybe a bit of both, he finally admitted. I saw terrible things in the war, did terrible things. Sometimes I think the mountains are my penance, a place to hide from what I was. You were a soldier, Teresa said gently. You did what you had to do to survive. I was 17 when I enlisted, thought I was invincible, thought war would be glorious. Nathan's hands clenched. I learned different quick enough. But by then, there was no going back. You just kept moving forward, kept fighting, kept watching friends die around you. Teresa moved closer to him, taking one of his large, scarred hands in both of hers. The war ended almost 20 years ago, Nathan. You've punished yourself long enough. Have I? Nathan looked at their joined hands, her small fingers intertwined with his. Sometimes I think I've just been waiting. For what? I don't know. Something, someone. He met her eyes. Maybe for you. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Teresa's breath hitched, and Nathan saw the pulse at her throat quicken. You barely know me, she whispered. I know enough. I know you're strong and talented and kind. I know you've faced hardship without losing your ability to see beauty in the world. I know that when I'm with you, I feel more alive than I have in years. Nathan. Teresa's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I feel the same way, but I'm afraid. What if this is just a moment? What if tomorrow you ride back up into your mountains and I never see you again? Nathan cupped her face with his free hand, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. I'm not going anywhere, not without you. What are you saying? I'm saying come with me, up to the mountains, to my cabin. Let me take care of you, protect you. Let me show you all the beautiful places I've discovered over the years. We can figure out the rest as we go. That's crazy, Teresa said, but there was hope in her voice. We've known each other less than 2 days. Sometimes that's all it takes. One look, one moment, and your whole life changes. Nathan leaned closer. I looked at you yesterday, sketching in that dirt with such determination, and something in me recognized something in you. Tell me you don't feel it too. I do, Teresa admitted. I feel it so strongly it terrifies me. Then be terrified with me, be brave with me, say yes. Teresa searched his face, and whatever she saw there must have reassured her because she smiled, bright and beautiful. Yes, yes, I'll come with you. Nathan kissed her then, gentle and reverent, pouring all his hope and longing into that contact. Teresa melted against him, her hands coming up to grip his shoulders. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. We should probably court properly first, Teresa said, sounding dazed. That's what respectable people do. We'll court, Nathan promised. We'll do everything proper, but we'll do it on our terms in our own way. Is that all right with you? More than all right. They rode back to town in the golden light of late afternoon, and Nathan's mind was already making plans. He'd need to stock up on supplies. Winter was only a few months away, and they'd need extra provisions. He'd need to make his cabin more comfortable, suitable for a woman. And there were practical matters to consider, like getting Teresa warmer clothes and proper boots for mountain living. But first, there was something else he needed to do. The next morning, Nathan walked into Wheatland's small church and spoke with Reverend Thomas, a kindly man with white hair and gentle eyes. I want to marry her, Nathan explained. Soon as she'll have me, but I want to do it right with the church's blessing. Reverend Thomas smiled. Love moves in mysterious ways, my son, but I've learned not to question its timing. Bring Miss Hayes to speak with me, and we'll arrange everything. Teresa was more hesitant about the speed of it all, but Nathan could see the longing in her eyes. Are you sure? She asked him as they sat on Mrs. Palmer's porch that evening. You're not just trying to rescue me. I'm not trying to rescue you, Nathan said firmly. You're not some damsel in distress who needs saving. You're a strong, capable woman who's survived more than most folks could handle. What I'm offering is partnership. Someone to share your life with, to build something with. I need you just as much as you need me, Teresa. Maybe more. But what about children? Teresa's cheeks flushed. I'm 23 years old. If I'm going to have a family, I need to start thinking about these things. Then let's think about them together. I'd love nothing more than to have children with you if that's what you want. A whole house full of little artists running around, drawing on every surface they can reach. Teresa laughed, the sound like music. You've really thought about this. I haven't thought about much else since I met you. They were married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the church. Teresa wore a new dress that Nathan had commissioned from the dressmaker, a soft cream color that made her skin glow. Mrs. Palmer served as witness along with Martin from the mercantile, and Reverend Thomas pronounced them man and wife. "You may kiss your bride," the Reverend said with a smile. Nathan gathered Teresa into his arms and kissed her thoroughly, not caring that they had an audience. When he finally released her, her face was pink and her eyes were shining. "Hello, Mrs. Wade," Nathan murmured. "Hello, husband." They spent their wedding night at the boarding house, Mrs. Palmer having given them the best room with a real brass bed and lace curtains. Nathan was gentle with Teresa, taking his time, making sure she felt cherished and desired. Afterwards, she lay in his arms, tracing patterns on his chest. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and find this was all a dream," she said softly. "If it is, we're both dreaming it." Nathan kissed the top of her head. "And I never want to wake up." The next few weeks were spent preparing for their journey to Nathan's cabin. He bought Teresa proper traveling clothes, sturdy boots, and a warm coat, along with everything she'd need for drawing. Paper, charcoal, even some colored pencils that had caught his eye in the mercantile. "You're spoiling me," Teresa protested, but Nathan could see her delight. "Good. You deserve to be spoiled." They set out on a bright September morning, everything they owned packed on Juniper, and a second horse Nathan had purchased, a gentle mare named Daisy. The journey took 3 days, winding through foothills and steadily climbing into the mountains. Nathan showed Teresa how to read the landscape, where to find water and shelter, how to spot wildlife before it spotted you. "You're teaching me to be a mountain woman," Teresa said, laughing. "I'm teaching you to survive out here, but you're already stronger than you think." The cabin, when they finally reached it, exceeded Teresa's expectations. It was larger than she'd imagined, solidly built of logs with a stone chimney and real glass windows. Inside, Nathan had made improvements, adding a bigger bed, a proper table and chairs, and shelves for Teresa's art supplies. "When did you do all this?" she asked, amazed. "I've been working on it every day since we got married, wanted it to be perfect for you." Teresa turned to him with tears in her eyes. "It is perfect. You're perfect." They settled into married life with surprising ease. Nathan taught Teresa to fish and hunt, to read the weather and predict storms. Teresa taught Nathan to see the world through an artist's eyes, to appreciate the small details he'd been overlooking for years. She drew constantly, filling page after page with images of their life together. The first snow came in October, and they spent long evenings by the fire, talking and reading from the small collection of books Nathan had accumulated over the years. On cold nights, they made love slowly, learning each other's bodies and preferences, building intimacy brick by brick. "I want to tell you something," Teresa said one evening as they lay tangled together in bed. "Something I've never told anyone." "You can tell me anything," Nathan assured her. "When my father died, I thought about ending my own life. I was so alone, so tired of struggling. I couldn't see any reason to keep going." She paused, her fingers tracing circles on Nathan's chest. "The only thing that stopped me was the thought that I hadn't created my best work yet. That somewhere inside me was a drawing or painting that needed to exist, and if I gave up, the world would never see it." Nathan's arms tightened around her. The thought of Teresa in such despair, of nearly losing her before he'd ever found her, made his chest ache. "I'm glad you held on," he said roughly. "So damn glad, so am I. Because now I know what I was waiting for. It wasn't a drawing or a painting, it was this. You. A life worth living." Winter descended in earnest and they were snowed in for weeks at a time, but Teresa never complained. She drew and sketched, capturing the stark beauty of the winter landscape. Nathan split wood and hunted when the weather allowed, keeping them fed and warm. They were isolated from the world, just the two of them against the elements, and it was the happiest either had ever been. Christmas came, and Nathan surprised Teresa with a set of watercolor paints he'd purchased months ago in anticipation of this moment. "How did you hide these?" Teresa demanded, delighted. "We're living in a one-room cabin." "I have my secrets," Nathan teased. Teresa gave him a gift, too, a drawing she'd been working on in secret. It showed Nathan standing in front of the cabin, axe in hand, with mountains rising behind him. But it wasn't the technical skill that moved Nathan, impressive as it was. It was the way Teresa had captured him, strong and protective, yes, but also tender. He looked like a man who'd found his place in the world, his purpose. He looked loved. "This is how you see me," Nathan asked, his voice thick. "This is who you are," Teresa corrected. "My husband, my love. My home." Nathan made love to her right there in front of the fire, slow and sweet, showing her with his body what words couldn't express. As winter gave way to spring, Teresa began to feel ill in the mornings. At first she thought it was something she'd eaten, but when the nausea persisted and her monthly courses failed to arrive, realization dawned. "Nathan," she said one morning after being sick for the third day in a row, "I think I'm pregnant." Nathan had been cleaning his rifle, but at her words he set it aside carefully and crossed to her in 3 long strides. "Pregnant, are you sure?" "As sure as I can be without seeing a doctor. All the signs are there." A slow smile spread across Nathan's face, transforming him. "We're going to have a baby. Teresa, we're going to be parents." He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. Teresa clutched his shoulders, laughing too, caught up in his excitement. "I need to take better care of you now," Nathan said, setting her down carefully as if she might break. "You need to rest more, eat more. We should go into town, see a real doctor." "Nathan, I'm pregnant, not fragile. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time." "Not my wife." "Not carrying my child." Nathan's hand went to her still flat stomach. "This is precious, Teresa. You're both precious to me." They made the journey to Wheatland in early June when the mountain passes were clear and the weather mild. Dr. Morrison, the town's physician, confirmed Teresa's pregnancy and pronounced her healthy. "The baby should arrive in late autumn," he told them. "Just make sure Mrs. Wade gets plenty of rest and good food. And you might want to consider staying in town for the delivery, especially if this is your first. Mountain living can be harsh and complications do arise." But Teresa had other ideas. "I want our baby born in the cabin, in the home we've made together. It feels right." Nathan worried about it, but he also understood. The cabin was their sanctuary, the place where their love had grown and flourished. Having their child born there seemed fitting somehow. They spent the summer preparing. Nathan built a cradle from smooth pine, sanding it until there wasn't a splinter to be found. Teresa sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her hands moving with sure, practiced stitches. They talked endlessly about names, unable to agree but enjoying the debate nonetheless. "If it's a boy, I want to name him after your father," Nathan said one evening. Teresa looked up from her sewing, surprised. "You never met my father." "No, but he gave me you. That deserves recognition." "His name was Thomas," Teresa said softly. "Thomas Edward Hayes. Thomas Edward Wade. It has a good sound to it." "And if it's a girl," Nathan thought about it. "What was your mother's name?" "Catherine, but everyone called her Kate." Kate Wade, I like it. Nathan knelt beside Teresa's chair and placed his hand on her swollen belly. What do you think, little one? Do you like those names? As if in answer, the baby kicked, making both parents laugh. As autumn approached and Teresa grew larger, Nathan became increasingly protective. He barely left her side, hovering anxiously whenever she so much as winced. Nathan, you're going to drive me mad, Teresa finally said, exasperated but fond. I'm fine. The baby's fine. You need to calm down. I can't help it. Every time I think about something going wrong, about losing you or the baby, I feel like I can't breathe. Teresa took his face in her hands. Nothing's going to go wrong. Women have babies every day. I'm strong and our child is strong. You have to trust in that. I do trust you. It's the universe I don't trust. But the universe proved kinder than Nathan feared. On a crisp October evening, with the leaves turning gold outside their windows, Teresa went into labor. Nathan had brought in a midwife from a nearby settlement, a capable woman named Sarah who delivered dozens of babies. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Nathan's fear threatened to overwhelm him. But Teresa was a fighter, bearing the pain with remarkable courage. When their son finally arrived just after dawn, his lusty cries filling the cabin, Nathan wept openly. You did it, he said, kissing Teresa's sweaty forehead. You're incredible. We did it, Teresa corrected, exhausted but glowing. We made him together. Thomas Edward Wade was a healthy baby with dark hair like his father and his mother's delicate features. Nathan was utterly enchanted, spending hours just watching his son sleep, marveling at the tiny fingers and toes. I never knew I could love something this much, he confessed to Teresa one night as they lay in bed with Thomas sleeping between them. It's almost frightening. I know, Teresa agreed. It's like your heart exists outside your body now, vulnerable to every possible harm. How do people stand it? The same way we'll stand it, by loving them fiercely and teaching them to be strong and hoping we do right by them. They adapted to parenthood with the same teamwork that had characterized their marriage. Nathan would wake for the middle of the night feedings, changing Thomas and bringing him to Teresa, then pacing the floor with the baby while Teresa rested. Teresa, despite her exhaustion, still found time to draw, now filling her sketchbooks with images of their son. Winter came again, their second in the cabin, and this time they weren't alone. Thomas grew and thrived, meeting every milestone with enthusiasm. By spring, he was crawling, exploring every corner of the cabin with fearless determination. He's going to be a handful, Teresa predicted, scooping up their son before he could pull himself up on the wood stove. He's a Wade, Nathan said proudly. Of course he'll be a handful. That summer, they made another trip to Wheatland. Thomas was now over a year old, a bright, curious toddler who delighted everyone he met. Teresa used the opportunity to sell some of her drawings, and to her surprise, they were well received. A woman visiting from Denver purchased 3 mountain landscapes, paying more than Teresa had expected. You could make a living at this, the woman said. Real money, not just pocket change. Have you thought about doing a gallery showing? Teresa laughed. I live in a mountain cabin with my husband and son. Gallery showings aren't exactly practical. Perhaps not now, but keep creating, Mrs. Wade. You have genuine talent. The praise stayed with Teresa long after they'd returned to the cabin. She began working on larger, more ambitious pieces, and Nathan encouraged her, building her a proper easel and clearing space near the window where the light was best. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Seasons passed, marked by the changing landscape and Thomas's steady growth. By the time he was 3, Thomas was talking in complete sentences and showing an interest in both his father's outdoor skills and his mother's artistic pursuits. He's going to need schooling eventually, Teresa said one evening as they watched Thomas attempting to draw a picture of Juniper. Real education, not just what we can teach him. I know, Nathan admitted. I've been thinking about that. There's a new school in Wheatland, opened last year. We could spend winters in town, let him attend school, then come back up here for summers. You'd be willing to do that? Leave the mountains for months at a time. Nathan pulled her close. I'd do anything for you and Thomas. The mountains will always be here, but our son's childhood passes in a blink. I won't sacrifice his future for my preference for solitude. They implemented the plan the following winter, renting a small house in Wheatland and enrolling Thomas in school. It was an adjustment for all of them, Nathan especially, who found town life constraining after years of freedom. But watching Thomas thrive, making friends and learning to read, made the sacrifice worthwhile. Teresa, too, found unexpected benefits to their new arrangement. She joined a small artists group that met weekly, sharing techniques and critiquing each other's work. For the first time since leaving Ohio, she had female friends, women who understood her passion for art. Spring brought them back to the cabin, and the joy of returning to their mountain sanctuary was profound. Thomas ran through the meadow where Nathan had first taken Teresa years ago, now tall enough to see over the wildflowers. This is my favorite place in the whole world, Thomas announced. Mine too, son, Nathan agreed, catching Teresa's eye over their son's head. The years continued to pass in a blur of happiness and growth. Thomas grew tall and strong like his father, but he inherited Teresa's artistic temperament and gentle nature. Nathan taught him to hunt and trap, to survive in the wilderness, while Teresa taught him to see beauty everywhere, to capture it on paper and canvas. When Thomas was 7, Teresa became pregnant again. This time, she was less anxious, knowing what to expect. Their daughter, Kate Catherine Wade, was born on a mild spring evening, her arrival much easier than her brother's had been. She's perfect, Nathan said, cradling his daughter in his massive arms. She looked impossibly tiny against his chest, a delicate creature with wisps of light brown hair. Just like her father, Teresa teased, Thomas was utterly smitten with his baby sister, constantly wanting to hold her and help care for her. He drew pictures for her, filling a whole sketchbook before Kate was even a month old. When she's bigger, I'm going to teach her everything, Thomas declared seriously. How to draw and how to track deer and how to fish. That's a lot of responsibility, Nathan said, equally serious. Think you can handle it? I'm her big brother. It's my job. With 2 children, life became busier but no less joyful. The cabin seemed to ring constantly with laughter and noise. Nathan added on a room to give Thomas his own space, and talk began of eventually building a larger house. Maybe not right away, Teresa said, but someday. When the children are older and need more space. Whatever you want, love. I'd build you a mansion if you asked. I don't need a mansion, just enough room for our family and my studio. Teresa's art had continued to develop over the years. She now painted primarily in oils, having graduated from charcoal and watercolors. Her subjects were the mountains she'd come to love, the wildlife she observed daily, and intimate portraits of her family. Nathan's face appeared in dozens of paintings, captured in moments of concentration, joy, and tenderness. When Kate was 3, a gallery in Denver contacted Teresa about showing her work. Someone had seen her paintings in Wheatland and passed word to the bigger city. Teresa was hesitant at first, uncomfortable with the attention, but Nathan encouraged her. The whole world should see your talent, he insisted. This is your dream, Teresa. Don't let fear hold you back. The showing was a remarkable success. Teresa sold nearly every painting, and commissions poured in. Suddenly, They had more money than they'd ever imagined, enough to build that larger house and ensure Thomas and Kate would have opportunities their parents never had. But even with success and recognition, Teresa remained humble and grounded. "None of this would have happened without you," she told Nathan the night they returned from Denver. "You gave me the tools to create when I had nothing. You believed in me before I believed in myself." "I just saw what was already there," Nathan replied. "You did the rest." Thomas turned 16, a young man now rather than a boy. He'd grown to match his father's height, with the same broad shoulders and strong frame, though his hands were those of an artist, long-fingered and graceful. He'd begun courting a girl from Wheatland, a sweet-natured young woman named Emily, and Nathan and Teresa watched with bittersweet pride as their son took his first steps toward independence. When did he get so grown? Teresa wondered aloud one evening. "Same time we got old," Nathan joked, though at 48 he was still strong and vital. "You have regrets?" Teresa asked. "About how we've lived, the choices we've made?" Nathan thought about it seriously. "Not a single one, you." "Never. This life we've built together, it's more than I ever dreamed possible. Sometimes I think about that day you found me drawing in the dirt, and I can hardly believe I'm the same person." "You're not. We both changed that day, became who we were meant to be." Kate, now 12, was showing remarkable artistic talent, surpassing even her mother's skill at the same age. She painted with an intensity that was almost fierce, losing herself completely in her work. "She reminds me of you when we first met," Nathan told Teresa, watching their daughter work on a complex landscape. "That same focus, that need to create. I see it too, but she's braver than I was, more confident. She knows her worth." "That's because she has parents who have always believed in her. You didn't have that." "No," Teresa agreed softly, "but I have it now. I have you." Thomas married Emily when he was 20, a joyful celebration that brought together their mountain community and town friends. The young couple chose to settle in Wheatland, where Thomas had established himself as a skilled carpenter and Emily worked as a teacher. "Do you miss having him here?" Teresa asked Nathan after the wedding as they lay in bed in their now quiet house. "Every day. But he's building his own life, just like we did. That's how it's supposed to be." A year later, Thomas and Emily made them grandparents with the birth of a daughter they named Teresa Catherine, after both grandmothers. Holding his tiny granddaughter, Nathan felt the circle complete somehow. "We've been blessed," he said to Teresa. "More than most folks ever are." Kate stayed with them through her teenage years, apprenticing with established artists in Denver during the winters, but always returning to the mountains she loved. She was 20 when a young surveyor named Daniel came through, mapping the territory for the railroad. He was immediately smitten with Kate, and to everyone's surprise, the feeling was mutual. "He sees the world the way I do," Kate tried to explain to her parents. "Like it's full of possibility and wonder." "That's a good quality in a partner," Teresa assured her. "Your father saw me that way when we met, and it made all the difference." Kate and Daniel married 2 years later, settling in Cheyenne, where Daniel had accepted a position with the territorial government. Kate continued to paint, and her work began appearing in galleries across the West. "Both our children happy and thriving," Teresa said, watching Kate and Daniel drive away after a visit. "We did well, Nathan." "We did," Nathan agreed, pulling her close. They were both in their 50s now, their hair threaded with gray, but their love had only deepened with time. They continued to split their time between the mountains and Wheatland, enjoying visits with their growing family. Thomas and Emily had 3 more children, 2 boys and another girl, while Kate and Daniel had twin sons who inherited their mother's artistic talent and their father's head for numbers. As Nathan approached 60, he began to slow down, the decades of hard mountain living taking their toll on his body. But he never complained, simply adapted, finding new ways to be useful. "I'm getting old," he admitted to Teresa one evening. "We both are. It's not a tragedy, Nathan. It's a gift. Not everyone gets to grow old with the person they love." "That's true enough." Nathan looked at his wife, still beautiful to him despite the lines on her face and the silver in her hair. "I love you, Teresa Wade, just as much today as I did when I first saw you drawing in that dirt." "More," Teresa corrected. "We love each other more now because we know what we have. We've built a life together, raised children, weathered storms. That deepens love in ways nothing else can." The seasons continued their eternal cycle. Winters grew harder as Nathan's joints stiffened with age, and Teresa developed a cough that worried them both. But they still found joy in each day, in the sunrises they watched from their porch, in the grandchildren who visited and filled the house with noise and laughter. Thomas took over more of the physical work around the cabin, making the journey up from Wheatland regularly to split wood and make repairs. Kate sent paintings to decorate the walls, bright splashes of color that celebrated the landscape her parents loved. On their 40th wedding anniversary, their entire family gathered at the cabin. All 8 grandchildren, ranging in age from infant to teenager, ran through the meadow where Nathan had once courted Teresa. A long table was set up outside, groaning with food, and music and laughter filled the air. 40 years, Teresa marveled, standing at Nathan's side and surveying the scene. "Can you believe it?" "Barely. Feels like yesterday and forever at the same time." That night, after everyone had gone to bed in tents scattered around the property, Nathan and Teresa sat by the fire, holding hands. "Thank you," Teresa said quietly. "For what? For seeing me that day, for bringing me paper and charcoal, for giving me a chance to be who I was meant to be." "You would have made it without me," Nathan said. "You're too talented, too determined to be held down for long, maybe. But with you, everything was better, brighter, fuller." Teresa squeezed his hand. "I want you to know that if I could go back and live my life again, I wouldn't change a single thing. Every moment, good and bad, led me to you, and that makes it all worth it." Nathan pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his chest. "Same here, love. Same here." They stayed in the cabin year-round now, finding winters in town too taxing. Thomas and Emily moved to the old house in Wheatland, keeping it ready for whenever Nathan and Teresa needed to come down for supplies or doctor visits. The grandchildren visited regularly, and the cabin echoed with stories and songs. Nathan's health declined gradually, his strong body finally giving out after decades of hard use. But he remained sharp and engaged, still interested in everything around him. He taught his grandsons to trap and track, passing on knowledge accumulated over a lifetime in the mountains. Teresa's cough worsened, and Dr. Morrison diagnosed weak lungs, common in mountain dwellers, but she refused to leave their cabin, the place where she'd found happiness and purpose. "This is my home," she told Nathan firmly. "I'll stay here as long as I can." "Then we'll stay together," Nathan replied, "like we've always been." On a golden September afternoon, much like the one when they'd first met, Nathan and Teresa sat on their porch watching the sun set behind the mountains. Nathan's breathing was labored now, his once powerful frame thin and fragile, but his eyes were still bright when he looked at his wife. "It's been a good life," he said. "The best," Teresa agreed. She'd sketched that morning for the first time in weeks, her hands steadier than they'd been in months. The drawing showed their cabin with smoke curling from the chimney, the mountains rising behind it, and 2 figures standing on the porch, forever young, forever together. "I'm not afraid," Nathan said. "Of what comes next, neither am I, as long as we're together, always together, in this life and whatever comes after." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Somewhere in the distance, an elk bugled, and closer by, a hawk called. The world they'd loved so fiercely continued its ancient rhythms, indifferent to human joy and sorrow. "Nathan," Teresa's voice was soft. "Yes, love, thank you for finding me. Thank you for everything." Nathan smiled, his weathered hand finding hers. "Thank you for letting me, for choosing me, for loving me, for giving me a life worth living." As darkness fell and stars began appearing in the vast Wyoming sky, they remained there, hand in hand. Two souls who'd found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. Their love story had begun with simple kindness, a man bringing paper and charcoal to a woman who had nothing, and it had grown into something that would echo through generations. Thomas found them the next morning, still sitting together on the porch, still holding hands. They'd passed peacefully in the night, just hours apart, as if neither could bear to be separated from the other even in death. The funeral was well attended, people coming from across Wyoming to pay their respects. Stories were shared of Nathan's kindness and strength, of Teresa's talent and grace, of the love that had been evident to everyone who knew them. "They were lucky," someone said. "They were brave," Kate corrected. "They took a chance on love when they had every reason to be afraid." And they built something that lasted. The cabin became a family gathering place, maintained by Thomas and his sons, visited by Kate and her family every summer. Teresa's paintings hung on every wall, a permanent reminder of the woman who'd started with nothing but dirt and a stick, yet had created beauty that touched hundreds of lives. In Wheatland, a small museum opened, dedicated to preserving Teresa's artistic legacy. Her charcoal drawings and oil paintings drew visitors from across the country, each work a testament to her remarkable talent. But the museum's centerpiece was that first drawing Nathan had watched her create in the dirt, the one she'd later recreated on the paper he brought her. It showed the Laramie Mountains at sunset, and if you looked closely, you could see two small figures standing together in the foreground, hands joined, facing the future together. Years passed, then decades. The Wild West faded into history, transformed by railroads and automobiles and all the trappings of modernity. But the story of Nathan and Teresa Wade persisted, passed down through their descendants, each generation adding new chapters while honoring the foundation laid by that mountain man and the artist he'd found sketching in the dirt. Their great-great-grandchildren still visited the cabin, now preserved as a historical site. Children ran through the meadow where Nathan and Teresa had courted, picked wildflowers like Teresa once had, and listened to stories of love and courage and the power of simple kindness. Because that's what it had really been about in the end. Not grand gestures or dramatic pronouncements, but a man seeing someone in need and choosing to help. A woman brave enough to accept that help and build something new. Two people recognizing in each other what the rest of the world had overlooked and deciding that recognition was worth fighting for, worth committing to, worth building a life around. It was a love story for the ages, but it was also a reminder that such stories start small, with single acts of compassion and moments of connection. Nathan Wade brought Teresa Hayes paper and charcoal so she could create, and in doing so, they created something far more valuable than any work of art. They created a love that transcended time, a family that spanned generations, and a legacy that reminded everyone who heard their story that kindness matters, that creativity should be nurtured, and that love, when tended carefully, can bloom even in the harshest conditions. The mountain still stood watch over the cabin where they'd lived and loved and raised their family. The meadow still burst into bloom every spring. And somewhere in the eternal cycle of the seasons, in the whisper of wind through pine trees and the call of birds at dawn, the echo of their love remained, as permanent and enduring as the Wyoming landscape itself. Their story became legend, the mountain man and his artist wife, proof that sometimes the most extraordinary lives grow from the most ordinary moments, that forever can begin with a simple gesture of kindness, and that true love, once found, never really ends. It simply transforms, living on in the hearts and lives of those who come after, inspiring new generations to be brave, to be kind, and to believe in the transformative power of love.